story there, but then chapter 13 picks up and you read in verses, or at the beginning of the chapter there, the Lord speaking to Moses saying, Father, you shall send men, every one a chief among them. So Moses sent them to the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the people of Israel. He lists the names, which I will not read because Rose will be laughing too hard by the end of the list. It was interesting to me. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I forgot all about it. It was interesting to me when you go to the Deuteronomy account and you see when Moses is recounting this. In fact, turn over there. Put your marker here, but turn over to Deuteronomy 1. And you see in chapter 1, verse 22, where it says, this is Moses speaking to them, Moses telling them about this occasion. Verse 21, see, the Lord your God has set the land before you. Go up and take possession, as the Lord your God of your fathers has told you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Then all of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us, that they may explore the land for us, and bring us word again of the way by which we must go up, in the cities which we shall come. And the thing seemed good to me, and I took 12 men from among you, each from each tribe, one man from each tribe. So in those two accounts, it reads very differently. In Numbers, it sounds like God initiated the spies, and in Deuteronomy, it sounds like the people came and asked for the spies. You see this a lot of times in the Bible where we have multiple accounts of the same thing. You see things like this that on the surface appear to be in conflict. And so this, to me, is an interesting exercise. On the surface, it seems to be a conflict. How maybe is it not a conflict? And I think all of us are coming from the standpoint of believing that the Bible is never going to contradict itself. How could we see this in a way that doesn't contradict itself?
Stuff with God, and he says, oh, that's good, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, there you go. So you pray, and God says he gives it to you. From your standpoint, you might tell the story. Say, I asked for this, and God gave it to you. And from Jane's standpoint, she may say, well, God just gave it to him. She may not say the first part of the story. Okay, yeah, absolutely. No real challenge, no real problem. I guess my thinking is that the children of Israel, the Israelites, are the ones who were being told to go up, and they said, hey, before we go up, can we send some spies in to see what it's all about? And then God says, yes, and this is the way to do it. Send out 12 men. That's kind of the way my mind is thinking of it. Maybe it was the opposite. Maybe God says, I want you to send out the spies, and the people came and said to Moses, this is what we want to do. But regardless, it's an interesting exercise when you see details that don't seem to line up perfectly. Don't jump to a conclusion that there's a conflict, which people who doubt the Bible are always going to do that. They're always going to jump to that conclusion.
God was on board on the plan.
That's right. I think God was clearly on board. I do think that if you see it the way I stated it, where the people are the ones who are asking for it, you can start to see some doubts. Like, God's telling us to go do this, but before we do, we'd like to scope it out first. We'd like to see what we're signing up for. And because we don't know that for sure, I don't want to make that point too hard, but that's the way it feels to me. But again, to Martin's point, oftentimes when we have something on our heart, on our minds to do, there is a legitimate way to do it. And this is an example, I think, of that, where you see God telling them how he wants it done at their request. So, all right, so we have the spies being sent. We have these men. It says they were all heads of the tribe. So remember that as you get deeper into the story, is these are not just, some teenagers that we just decided to send just in case something bad happens to them. These are heads of the tribes. These would have been respected men. So when they bring the report back, they're men that the people are used to listening to. And also that's really kind of part of the shame of it, is that when your leaders aren't trusting in the Lord, when your leaders aren't men of faith, you see how badly things can go. So what are they looking for? He mentions what he wants them to look for. In fact, let's go down and just kind of scan with me. I guess verse 17 through 24. Just scan that and let's just talk about that for a minute. What are they looking for? What's the goal in spying out the land? Okay.
It tells us to go from the Negev, which is southern, into the mountainous area.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, just see what it's about overall. See if it's a good land. And think about that. I mean, we know a lot about the land. We have all this history and stories that are anchored to that land from before and after. They've heard about it. You know, they've heard about the promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They've heard about this promised land. But now they're right at the doorstep. I mean, they are right there. And this is their first opportunity to take it in, their first opportunity to see what it's all about. That's pretty exciting. It's very exciting.
So it's the quality and nature of the land.
All right.
And there's a second thing here. Have them spy out the land to see if what God told them about it is true so they can see for themselves. That God has kept his promise about the quality of the land.
It's a kind of a faith becoming sight moment for them. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, they want to make sure that whether they'll be able to take it in
Yeah.
states,
Yeah.
whether they're, what would be the challenge of taking it.
Yes. Which to me shows, I think that's one reason I read it as this is something that people wanted and God told them how to do it, because God could have given it to them no matter what was there. He could have given them the land no matter how fortified the cities, no matter how mighty the people. I think they wanted to see. They wanted to get a read on what they were signing up for. And again, if you see it that way, to me, there's a little bit of a warning in there. Is if I sit there and think too much about the task in front of me, I can talk myself out of it. You know, like I want to talk to this guy. Man, I've got a couple of guys in my mind that I've been trying to find the right opportunity to talk to them about the gospel. You know, I've got a relationship with them. I've built a foundation, and I want to talk to them. And I just kind of build it up in my mind as it's going to be this big thing, and I keep not doing it. I've spied out the land. I've been spying it out for 40 days. I take the step. You know, go in. God's going to be with you. There's a warning here to me of when you know God wants you to do something, don't think about it too long. Just do it. Just get up and do it.
Out the spies. I can see where you're coming from in a sense. It's not all that different. God will allow them to have a kingdom.
That's it. That's how I'm seeing this story.
In both cases, it seems the people initiated the conversation.
That's my feeling for sure. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Personal experience I had. I guess it's been 3 years ago. We went to an Auburn game. They played Mississippi State, and walking to the stage, and there's all these people on the corners preaching, you know, and everything. And I'm listening, and man, I can't stand the fact they're preaching all this error. I just feel like I need to say something. So I didn't. So I go to the game, and it's eating on me a little bit, you know. I said, if they're out there still, I'm going to say something, you know. And then I get out there, they're out there, and I'm still holding back. I don't know, you know. And finally I told Mason, I'm going for it. And I didn't even have to say anything. I got up to them, and they come to me, you know. And so sometimes you just got to
Step in.
just approach it, and God will make things happen.
If you have that ultimate faith in the Lord, you know that you know the victory is going to be there. You know, whether it's a victory that you can sink your teeth into or not, but you know He's not going to leave you. Then why not? Why not just wade into the waters? Yes, sir. Is that your thought?
Okay. These two aspects we need to remember, the two purposes. Check out the land, check out the people. That's basically the two purposes.
Yeah.
Because we're going to come back to that when the report comes
That's
out.
right. That's right. It is interesting in those verses that he gives them some information. Obviously, he lists the cities, and he makes a connection. Verse 22: Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan. You know, why tell them that? They knew about Zoan. You know, they had been involved in that. And so that's giving them kind of a reference point for the land they're coming from to the land that they're going to. But he also gives us that clue that it's the time of the grape harvest, or the first grapes. I'm sorry, the first ripe grapes in verse 20. So, one way to read it would be, hey, let's go get our eyes on it and see what all God's going to give us. And then the other side is, let's go take a look and see how hard this task is going to be. And depending on your lenses, depending on how much faith you have, is going to be whether you come back from this, encouraged to the task or discouraged for what you're facing. And again, there's great lessons for us in there when we're looking at the challenges in our lives. Make sure we're looking with faith. Make sure we're not looking in a way that is looking for, problems, looking for excuses not to do things. Anybody else do that sometimes, where you look for excuses not to do what you know you ought to do? Oh man, it feels like it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle.
It's just human nature. That's just human nature fighting against our spiritual nature.
It is. It truly is, John. That's
They
right.
had to go through that.
That's right.
We do too.
So they go and they spy out the land. It doesn't tell us a lot about their time there, other than that they did get the grapes and brought them back, carrying them between a pole. And I remember the craft that I did in my little class growing up, where you had the two men bearing the cluster of grapes. Man, that was the biggest cluster of grapes, and that's just amazing to think about, a cluster of grapes that needs to be borne between two men. That's just one little piece of the picture that God gives us to show this amazing land that he was getting ready to give them. And that's one of the things that they immediately say, when they come back in verse 27, they show them the fruit of the land, verse 26, and says, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. And there's no doubt that this land, I guess I should have put that up already, where you see kind of the launching point, Kadesh Barnea, best guess there, where they would have gone up south through the Negev into that region. But there's no doubt that God's giving them a land that's wonderful. It's everything he's told them. It's everything he's promised. No doubt about that. And of course, for people of faith, there never should have been. There never could have been. If God said it's wonderful, then it's going to be wonderful. And that's one of the things that makes me think that it had to be the people asking for this, sneak peek. But it also could have been. It could have been that God wanted to give them this sneak peek, and also a look at the task to test their faith. That's one. You could look at it that way. That this is God, giving them a look at what's ahead of them to see whether they will falter or not, which obviously they do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't mean to suggest that was a question. You got the 40 days. We see that when the punishment is handed down, because he says you're going to wander in the wilderness, 1 year for every day you spied out the land. So that's absolute, sir. All right. So the problem, though, is the land is strong. The cities are fortified and very large. It says we saw the descendants of Anak there. These are a race that has been referenced in the Bible, or is referenced in the Bible several times. And it adds to that down in verse 33, the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from Nephilim. And they say, because of this, we seem like grasshoppers. We ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. So they're seeing these giants, they're seeing the fortified cities, and they're allowing themselves to feel like grasshoppers. That ideal of seeing yourself as a grasshopper, that's on you. That's your vantage point. You're seeing yourself as incapable for this task because you don't have faith.
Well,
agreed on quality of land.
Yes, that's right.
But on the hand, it was another confirmation of God's promise. He's kept yet another, he promised a land that flows with milk and honey. And in the reporting, they say it is indeed. They confirm his promise again. And yet then they immediately doubt his promise.
Well, and that's the interesting. They confirm this promise. This promise is absolute. Then the other promise that I will give it to you is the one that now we're going to question. To me, that it shows how quickly we can, beforehand we're doubting, is this land good and can give it to us? So the spies come back and say, okay, well, it is a good land. I'm not going to doubt that anymore, but now I'm going to keep doubting this. God gives us things, and as soon as we have them, we forget that we were worried about that, and we start worrying about this next thing.
And
That's so pathetic. It's really pathetic that we do that. And I say that as one who does that.
that's the nature of our relationship with God. Our relationship with God is not accepting the good things.
Yeah.
We all do that.
As soon as we get them, we forget.
It's the challenges, the accepting the challenges. Randall Tyler, when I was thinking, I'll never forget this. He had a lesson preaching White House meetings. And it was saying, overcoming nevertheless. Because in the King James and the New King James, they talk all about the land. Then they say, nevertheless.
Yeah.
And then start talking about the people in the city. Yours probably says, however. So you could say overcoming, however. Really, overcoming, however, that's what separates faith from unfaith every time.
So let me ask a question, and I'm still scanning. You scan with me here, the end of chapter 13. We're not quite going to get into 14 yet, but you see Caleb quieting the people. Joshua's not mentioned here, but we know later he is. Quieted the people, let us go up and occupy it. And the men who had gone up said, we're not able to go. I mean, not only now that they have said that it's hard, it's difficult, this is what's in store, but now they are saying, we can't do this. That's another level of doubting.
And what you're saying is God can't give it to us.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah, God's going to describe this in a little bit as them despising him. Although it doesn't say that here, it says that they're overwhelmed. They think the task is too big for them. And God translates that. God's take on that is, you didn't trust me. You didn't trust me. Chandler and then Rose.
And just to build on that, he's already destroyed the strongest force in Egypt. And at this time,
Yeah.
this moment in the world, very clearly the strongest force.
That was a year
He's already
ago,
been-
Chandler. That was a year ago. That's ancient history. Yeah, no, that army's, we never worry about that army. It's these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that should have been part of theirs, and what we later learned, when they finally do, and they're at Rahab's house in Joshua chapter 2, she says, fear has fought, we know the Lord has given you the land, and fear of you has fallen upon us. All the inhabitants of the land melt away before you, for we've heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you came out of Egypt. Then she goes on to some things that came.
And that makes it 40 years later that they're still feeling that way.
Yeah.
You've got a situation with the Israelites saying, there's no way we can take it. And the people in the land saying, there's no way we can stop it.
Yep. So just before we get to chapter 14 for a second, imagine, you're coming back, 40 spies, the 12 spies are coming back after 40 days, and they get there and they give this report. How do you think Caleb and Joshua saw this problem coming? Because it almost sounds like they're surprised by it a little bit. And he stands up, quiets the people in the next chapter. They say what they say, which is a powerful statement of faith. But I guess one thing that it got me thinking is, like, did they know that this problem was coming? Did they know that the 10 spies were going to be delivering this bad report? And part of the reason I'm asking that is because I can imagine that it didn't really come up as far as how this interaction is going to go until they got back. and they start talking about how strong the land is, and the people start, you hear the crowd reacting to fortified cities, and then they're asking them, can we do this? And they say, no, we can't do this. But maybe it's something that, as their lack of faith kind of mingled with the people's lack of faith, this problem just bubbled up there.
Well, it teaches us, just like you were saying a minute ago, and someone brought up the point, Rahab and the harlot mentions when they came out of Egypt, remember the sea was parted, the walked across. All this was in the past. Well, they've come out of this land full of milk and honey, and the other people are big, but they come out there excited, and 15 minutes later, they're in front of a group of people and say, you do it. That's how quickly can the devil get into our heart and us forget about what God has intended for us.
See, that's what I think there. And I think as the 12 spies are walking back, they're getting back. I don't think it really came to a head until they're standing before these people and asking for this report. And as you described it, that's how the devil can work on us. We've got these doubts. Maybe the 10 spies each had kind of their individual doubts, and they weren't really talking about it. They didn't maybe want to talk about it because of their doubts. And then you get there in the crowd of people, and the doubts just start kind of amplifying on themselves.
You gotta go tell these people how to all these fortified cities.
Yeah.
One thing to say, I think we can do it.
Right. That's right.
Peter stepped out of that boat, he knew he could walk on the water there for a second, but within a maximum amount of time, he was sinking.
Yeah. He took his eyes off of Jesus.
They don't seem to have, and just to juxtapose, the people in the land of Canaan had fear of the Lord. They feared him, they heard the story, and they thought, and the Israel who saw everything, they didn't still have fear. And as Proverbs tells us, fear is the foundation of true knowledge. And they didn't have fear of the Lord. They feared man over the Lord, I guess.
Yeah, that's
what
it.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they feared the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're supposed to fear him who can kill body and soul.
Yep.
Stop fearing those day-to-day earthly consequences.
And the Canaanites feared him. The Canaanites feared the Lord. They heard the story. It's shocking.
Well, and that happens so often where we amplify our problems in our minds, like these guys that I want to talk to, and I've played that conversation in my head so many times that I've made it a lot bigger than it is. It's just a conversation about faith and about the Bible. Just get in there and start it. But we pump the brakes, we worry, we think about it, we analyze it, and we make it bigger than it is. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just kind of wonder, what were the 10 spies and then later the people expecting?
Yeah.
That God had
Red
created
carpet.
this land.
Where's our red carpet?
If you put a big fence around it, nobody was living in it. If you have a very prosperous land, naturally people are drawn to that.
That's a
They
great
want to protect it. It's like, well, why were you expecting that it would be
They're just trying to get it
not
out.
that way?
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to displace the current owners.
That's it. Now, do remember, at this point, they have fought a couple battles, I think, right? But God has really fought their battles for them to this point. The battle at the Red Sea was not a battle. That was God destroying that army. And now they're seeing these battles in front of them. And God's saying, I'll be with you, but you have to fight. You have to take on your sword. That's different. This is different.
I think one of the strongest things that they said is we saw 5 different groups of people, and even told where they were at.
Mm.
So 5 against 1,
Yeah.
one Israelite people, that in itself to me would be something that would be very deterring.
Yeah. So in between chapter 13 and 14, we read that the congregation, this is the next verse, but the congregation raised a loud cry. The people wept that night and then grumbled, verse 2. We read Deuteronomy's account, it says they grumbled in their tents. They grumbled in their tents. And that made me think, so you hear this report, you hear the 10 spies saying, we can't do this. And the real problem doesn't come until everybody takes that home and stews on it. You take it home and you let that marinate. So here's these 10 leaders. Remember, 10 leaders that came back with this report, and they didn't just say it's going to be hard. They said we cannot do it. We cannot do it. And so the congregation takes that home and stews on it, And if they had been people of faith, they could have said, look, these guys, these leaders are telling us we can't do it, but God's with us. And they could have come back the next morning and said, you guys are wrong. You need to step aside. God told us we can do this, and we can. But again, human nature, several comments have touched on human nature, is you go home when you're by yourself and you have a moment with your thoughts, sometimes they can get away from you. Well, until they tell you to go against the Lord, absolutely. And that's a good example for us, absolutely.
Joshua and Caleb were surprised by what the others said. It seems like they kind of were doing the best they could to kind of overcome themselves, to overcome that opinion.
That's exactly right. So you see Joshua and Caleb, they're overwhelmed by circumstances. I think they didn't see this coming, I think, to the full extent. And as the murmuring and the grumbling grows, amplifies, they're standing there trying to be good leaders, but circumstances are washing their efforts away.
I love the wording. They even say, of the people of the land, their departure, what does it say? Mine says, their protection has departed from them.
Yeah.
That's Joshua and Caleb.
Yeah.
Assessment.
That's right. Let's get into chapter 14. I've kind of broke down these sections so we can see different people's sections. So really, Joshua and Caleb are in the middle of that. But let's read this section, kind of take these one at a time. So verse 1, then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to one another, let us choose a leader to go back to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to the congregation of the people of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into the land to give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. But the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of the meeting to the people of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me? In spite of all the signs that I have done among them, I will strike them with pestilence and disinherit them. I will make you a nation greater and mightier than they. So you see the people's reaction, verses 1 through 4, and then verse 10. You see Moses and Aaron in verse 5, and then Joshua and Caleb here, 6 through 9, and then the Lord and his initial judgment here, verses 10 through 12. So lots of things to think about. I think it overlaps with a lot of our conversation. What you see in the people's reaction is just, again, so short-sighted, so faithless, that they would say, I wish we had died in Egypt. I wish we had stayed in Egypt. I wish that we had died in the wilderness. It would have been better to die in the wilderness than for us to be here right now. Like, how faithless, how untrusting, how unappreciative of what God has done. And yet we can all see ourselves in those shoes. We've all been there where we're overwhelmed by the circumstance of a moment, and we forget about how far God has brought us. I mean, it's so shameful, and yet we all fall into that trap. To me, verse 4 is just unbelievable. I mean, not only, would it have been better that we died in the wilderness, then they say, let's take a leader, choose a leader to go back to Egypt. How incredibly foolish. How do you think that's going to go? It's unbelievable that was in their mind.
Contrast with God. He sent them a leader, get them out of Egypt.
Exactly.
They want to get back into Egypt.
Huge contrast, absolutely.
One other thing to underline as in their series of complaints is our children will become victims. there's gonna be some irony attached to that.
God's going to throw that back in their face here in a little bit. Absolutely.
Just the overarching thing is, for me, is we have a choice of sin or freedom of life, our life in terms of Jesus. And so many people do choose the cowardly way. So many people find the pleasures of essentially being a slave in sin because it can be more comfortable at certain moments than other situations. And this also reminds me of just 1 Samuel 8, when God says, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. They were bad. It's the same type of.
When God uses the terms down there, how long will they despise me? How long will they not believe in me? I know Rhodes made this point several months ago, but it's not that the people all of a sudden stop believing that God exists. They didn't stop believing in Him as an entity, but they stopped believing Him enough to obey. And this is such a huge thing. If we don't believe God enough to obey, then it's as if we don't believe. It's like those demons that believe and they tremble, but they don't do anything about it. Don't be like that. Don't. I know He exists. I know these things, but not believe Him enough to obey. That's shameful, and God considers it a despise. You're despising me. That's how He feels about it. You don't trust me enough to do what I say. And I think Chandler's point is one we should all meditate on. Is the initial giving your life to Jesus, coming out of sin, is euphoric for a lot of people. It's over the moon emotional, as it should be. But then it gets harder, and walking the straight and narrow is going to be. That's getting into today's lesson. It's going to be work. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And so what are you going to do? And there's, in the back of our minds, there's this, it'd be easier just to give up. It would be better for me just to stop trying, just to get back. It'd be so much easier back where I was. And this is that picture that he's painting for us.
I just want to mention, according to you, how God's initial response where he uses the word despise. Some of the other versions, such as New King James, uses reject.
Yes. Yeah. Very powerful. Yeah, that is no small thing, which is why God responds this way. I'm just going to wipe them out. That was his reaction at Sinai as well. Was, I'm done with you. we tried, it didn't work, and the offer second time, right, to make a great nation out of Moses, which is very interesting that was on the table here the second time as well.
They were willing to stone. They were willing to kill people. Because of their lack of fear and cowardice.
So let's flesh that out for a minute, because we made the point you've got 10 poor leaders pointing the people in the wrong direction, and you have 2 good leaders standing in the breach here trying to stem the tide, and they want to stone them. There are times where doing the right thing, putting your foot down and saying, I'm not moving from this spot. I know this is where God wants me to be. That can cost you your life. It can cost you friends. It can cost you family. It can cost you all kinds of things. But we need to be the people who are looking for those moments to put our foot down when it matters. And make sure we're the right kind of a leader. Make sure we're the right kind of influence. What's interesting to me is it sounds like, of course, Moses and Aaron, I think, are a little bit outside of this because they tear their clothes and they're on the right side. But everybody else has been pulled in this direction. Everybody else has been pulled in this direction of doubting the Lord, rejecting the Lord, despising Him, not trusting Him.
It's interesting. Let's stone them. And in fact, it says, mine says,
That's the same verse, right? Verse 10.
said to them, stone them with stones. And it says, and then the presence of the Lord, the glory of the Lord appeared in dark. It's like I'm reaching down to get stone, and then this and it's almost like, maybe I ought to hold off that stone.
My reading of that is, if God hadn't appeared, they probably would have been stoned.
But think about this. You're the people You're about to stone them, and then this comes down.
Which of the prophets did your fathers not kill? I mean, this is the people. Y'all remember, and I say the people, it's so easy to just point at this generation or at the Jewish nation and say, oh, there they go rejecting the Lord again. It's like, this is a picture of humanity. This is a picture of all of us. Don't think you're better than this. Don't think that you're above this. This is what all of us do. This is what all of us do, where we will reject the Lord. Now remember, connect this with the wording in verse 11. God says, how long will they not believe in me? So we started to flesh that out. It wasn't that they forgot about him. They didn't stop believing in his existence. They stopped believing in him enough to obey. And that concept is fleshed out in the chapters we've got up here, Hebrews 3 and 4. That concept is fleshed out in Hebrews 3 and 4, where God asked the question, why did that generation perish in the wilderness? Why did they not enter my rest? It was because of unbelief. Unbelief caused them to not enter. And that's not like, oh, they just stopped believing in his existence. It's the fact that they didn't believe him enough to obey. They didn't believe him enough to stay the course and hold their ground and do the right thing. That's such an important lesson for us to get.
Reminds me here, because mine said, will they never believe me even after all the miraculous signs I have done among them? It reminds me of Thomas with Jesus. And Jesus said, great that you believe, greater are those who don't see and believe. And that's what you're talking to, is this faith isn't here. They didn't have the faith and they saw all this. And I think all of us here are just wondering, well, I mean, if I saw everything God did, well, I would be a fool not to believe. And they still didn't.
That's right. Well, we have the luxury of looking forward in time too, and knowing that the walls of Jericho fell down, and David killed the Goliath, or killed Goliath. So many stories that we know that happen in the future from here.
All the flaming towers.
Sure.
I would be like, hey, he says we're not get it. However, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's hard.
Well, and remember what Jesus says about that. He says, if they won't believe
Moses and the prophets,
they wouldn't believe.
even if we came back from the dead.
Yep.
So I think we need to remind ourselves of that. Is God has given me enough. God, don't think about anybody else. Think about you. God has given you enough to believe. He's given you enough to do what you're supposed to do. And yeah, we can learn lessons from all these people. We should. That's why they're written there. But don't start thinking, if I had been here, if I'd been there. There's lessons to be learned. As Chandler's saying, I'm not disagreeing. But we need to take our stand where we're at and know God has given me enough to believe. Don't sit there and wish for something else. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for that sign. We need to hold our ground.
That's what unbelief is. You go back.
That's right.
You undo what you know.
That's right. That's
We
right.
don't
Start out.
forward, we go back.
That's right. Did you have your hand up there? Oh, Chandler? Okay. Let's move forward just for a second. The point about stoning them with stones, very good, well made. Let's talk about this statement. Martin alluded to it earlier, Joshua and Caleb's statements. They tear their clothes and they're standing there trying to stem the tide, trying to turn back this wave of unbelief. And they remind them in verse 7 of this great land. This is a good land. It's there for the taking. If God delights in us, He will give it to us. He will give us this land. That the ability that Joshua and Caleb had to make that stand when everybody else around them was running in the other direction is such a beautiful thing. It is such a beautiful thing. Yes, ma'am.
Characters, and if you get fast forward 40 years into the future from this event, Caleb's 85 years old. They're in the land. He's asking for his inheritance. He says, I tell you what I want. I want Hebron, which is where those giants were that y'all were scared to go in and take the land. They're still there.
Yeah.
And I still believe in God, and I believe He'll give that part to you.
At 85. And do you think at that time that didn't inspire faith in people?
Sure. So he had held that faith that whole period of time.
Awesome?
And that's the kind of faith you want to aspire to. It's from youth
So
to age.
give me that task. Here am I, send me. Like I want the difficult task. And when you have that attitude, that inspires other people. And now it wasn't enough on this occasion to stem the tide of unbelief, but they still did the right thing. And if they had been stoned with stones here, they would have been no less victorious. If they had been stoned with stones here, they would have been no less victorious.
Those dudes that had been burned in the fiery furnace in Babylon, they would still be victorious.
Conquerors, amen.
Well, and just to build off Caleb, he had to walk through the wilderness too, and it wasn't, he had to suffer because of.
Yeah. No, we can't get there yet today, but let's make that point, because there are some innocent people that end up having to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Moses is one. Moses was ready to go into the land. Joshua and Caleb, they were ready to go into the land. Why did they have to go 40 years in the wilderness? For these people's sin. It bees that way sometimes. Sometimes that's the way things go. I mean, it just, yes, sir.
Yeah. There were probably a lot of people that, if all the 10 spies had been like, yeah, we can go do it, they would have been in it, but they don't have the resolve to stand up with them right now. Or they go, well, yeah, what they're saying makes sense. And that's the thing, you have a very vocal group that are opposing it, that is fed by complaints, that is fed by discouragement, and that feeds on itself.
So look, and again, this is probably more discussion for next week, but after God pronounces the judgment, you're going to wander 40 years in the wilderness until all your bones are rotten, drying in the wilderness. He specifically excludes Joshua and Caleb from that. He doesn't exclude Moses from that. And yet at that point, you might wonder, Moses might be wondering, what about me? What about me?
At that point, he's not had the rockets.
Yeah, he hasn't sinned yet. He hasn't been specifically told, you will not enter yet. If I were him, I would be thinking, well, he didn't call my name because, I wasn't really a player in this. This was Joshua and Caleb's moment. And I'm kind of thinking that's probably where he was. But then later, and God knew, later Moses sins, and he is specifically forbidden from entering the promised land. And my point off of that, to Chandler's point, is if everyone else had been faithful in this moment,
Moses never had seen the rock.
Moses would have been able to enter the promised land. And that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking that the people's sin put Moses in another 40 years, through 40 years, extra challenges. Different challenges than he would have faced otherwise. And in that 40 years, he has this great sin and is then forbidden from entering the land. That seems so unfair to me. It feels so wrong, except for I know that our God is a just God. I mean, he does everything good. And we've already made the point. Moses, we have every reason to believe that he's in Abraham's bosom right now. He was transfigured with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. There's no reason to think that he didn't enter the true promised land, but this is still hard to swallow.
I was going to say, you see this throughout the Bible, God does tend to hold people in leadership at a higher standard than necessarily someone else, and it seems to be that way with Moses. Because, you can say, well, okay, he did this one time, you can sort of overlook it, but he got a pretty severe punishment.
For sure.
On that.
Despite the fact, and then we'll pick up here next week, we have this great section here where Moses intercedes. I mean, in our character study with Moses, we need to chew on this. So let's take a minute, chew on that, and we'll start there next week. Appreciate the discussion very much.